I'm ready. I'm ready.
Okay. So, Alpha Maurice Dixon, can you give us a brief introduction of who
Okay.
you are and what you do?
Alpha M. Dixon, financial advisor, have been in the business 30 years. Started out with a big firm back in the late 80s, Equitable X Advisors, have 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 an insurance license, annuity license, Series 6, 6 and 22. So I'm able to sell financial products, mutual funds, and give people, solid advice. And I've done that over the last 30 years and have gone from helping, started out in the retirement market with school teachers and then just kind of graduated from there from helping school teachers to young professionals, young doctors, young lawyers, professional athletes. So my practice has covered the whole spectrum of people. And
Okay. Very
yeah, so and here we are today.
cool. Okay. So, one of the things that is difficult for any relationship, whether it's, people who are just dating or, starting to get serious, or whether they're going to cohabitate or get married, is the merging of finances, right? So, what are some of the things that people should really be thinking about, whether they're cohabitating or marrying, when you're starting to merge finances, merging bills, merging, income out and expenses.
Good question. Um, I would say first and foremost, you want to put together like a budget strategy. And by that, I mean, for example, he's bringing in $6,000 a month after tax. She's bringing in $6,500 a month after tax. So that's $12,500. You put that, you write that down or in the computer, everything's computerized now. So you figure out, okay, this is the amount of money we need to live off. This is our budget, right? We got 12,500. How much of that? And then you kind of like expense out and say, okay, hopefully when you add up everything coming in isn't going out. And because if that is the case, then you kind of need to do some readjustment on where you live and what you're buying and all those kind of things. But just using my example, 12,500, I would say, in a realistic world, set goals along with that. So how much are you going to save a month? How much money is going to be saved pre-tax, IRA, 401k? How much money is going to be saved after tax? What's the tax burden? So look at that. Then also, depending on the age, people are getting married later in life. So what, and then, realistically too, if you're, let's say you're in your 50s and you're getting married, you have some savings, you have some assets, you have some things in place. And I'm not an attorney and I'm not a tax advisor, but do we need to do a prenup? Who's your accountant? Let's go talk to your accountant. Because it doesn't make sense of having two now that you're merging everything together. So get with a certified public accountant. Make sure that take that budget to them or her. Make sure everything's on point. And you also got to have a game plan. You got to have a short-term game plan, a medium-term game plan, and then a long-term game plan of what you're going to do, depending on which age you fall into.
Indeed, indeed. So, would you give different advice to a couple that is about to cohabitate as opposed to actually about to marry?
You know what? I would probably give pretty much the same advice. Marriage, of course, is a contract. So till death do you part. You want to, and you definitely want to do that. Um, cohabitating, you still have bills and stuff that um, believe it or not, it's probably a little bit more complicated if you're cohabitating, moving together versus, getting married, because that's supposed to be, forever. So you want to plan that out, make sure that, the health insurance, the life insurance, are you going to save money for kids' education? A little bit different if you're cohabitating, because those issues probably aren't coming up right now. Um, and it depends on how it evolves. So, and the long answer to your question is you still want to do the budget, but then there's different nuances of how you handle everything from that point on.
Okay. Okay. No, that's definitely fair. All the questions come up with cohabitating because now we have situations where a lot of people don't want to get married. People don't want to risk merging whatever it is that they have, and so perhaps it works to just cohabitate because then when it's time to go, you know, everybody just grab what you brought, whatever you brung, take it
Yeah,
on home,
yeah,
you
yeah, yeah,
know.
yeah. Well, I think too, though, I think if people are, like, let's say that, you have adults, right? And, and when I say adults, people that are seasoned, people that have been around, people that know some stuff. And hopefully that, you almost want to look at that situation as that, hey, look, it worked. Like a lot of people cohabitate, they've been together 10, 20 years. It works for them. They got property together. They have assets together. They're a team. They just, for whatever reason, didn't tie the knot, but that situation works for them. He loves her, she loves him. And so, and they're life partners. So maybe they're, in that particular case, they are planning for the future. They're buying artwork together. They're buying stocks and bonds together. They're buying crypto together. They're buying mutual funds together. So it just depends on, what that situation is. Now, you flip it, and then there are some situations where, okay, it's a 3-year plan or a 4-year plan that they're going to be together. They're
Yeah,
they're in medical school, and as they go to medical school, and after that 4 years, she's going east, he's going west. So it just all depends. But then that's probably a conversation that people need to have at some point in that whole scenario.
that's right. That's right. Now, here's something else that's whether you're, talking about marriage or just cohabitating, it's become popular over the last 6 to 7 years for women to start to seek providers. Now, that's problematic if, unless she's in her 20s and she's about to have, 5 or 6 babies. But if you're, like, because a lot of the women who are seeking providers are 40 plus, and they don't want to work. So what would you advise the man in in that situation if he's about to take an adult dependent?
Yeah,
For
that's
real, brother.
yeah, yeah,
Keep
yeah,
it
yeah.
real.
Well, in that situation, I would just tell him to, make sure everything's in place. I mean, there's some value. I mean, let's just say the brother's busy. Let's say, give you a scenario. I have a good friend of mine who is an airline pilot, and he's in that same situation. So he's flying all over the world, flying all over the country. So she provides the stability of making sure everything, the mail, the cleaners, the laundry, and there's a value to that. She takes the car, she takes the BMW to the shop, so there's a value in that. You can't discount that in terms of the value that she brings when he's traveling to Europe, and he's flying to Europe and all over the country, and he comes home, everything's in place. And those are the things that he doesn't have to worry about. I mean, if he were to have a full-time person doing that, it would cost him 3,000-4,000 a month doing that. So, there's certainly there's a value in that. So I'm not going to discount that. Um, For me, that doesn't work, but for some people it does.
Well, but in that case, he's a pilot, so he's making some really decent
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
money.
he's
And
making
so
yeah, he's
and let's
making
talk
two
about.
hundred fifty thousand. Yeah,
Okay, well there you go, 250. That's a lot. But let's talk about African Americans, because less than 5% of us make over six figures. Less than 5%. So if we have this huge population of women who are looking for providers, 250, you can work it out. But what if it's someone, Al, who's making 45, maybe he's making 50? Alabama, that's okay. Chicago, you're cutting it close. LA, it's not gonna happen.
yeah, yeah,
It's 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 not gonna happen. So if he's not making six figures, I mean, it would seem to me that it's kind of a disaster waiting waiting to happen. What are you thinking? I see the wheels turning. Just speak your mind.
yeah. Well, no, that's a tough situation because I mean, let's just say it's let's give them the benefit of the doubt. Say it's 40,000 after tax, so it's really like 55, but after the taxes, you end up with 45. It's probably real tight, and I don't know how long he could help sustain, because you sustaining two lifestyles on that amount of money. That's tough.
Yeah,
That's tough.
yeah,
That's
it's
tough.
tough, and it's just for me. I just feel like it's unrealistic, and we have to get to the point. And I'm not trying to chastise women and say, "Oh, you don't need to seek that. You can seek whatever it is you desire." But
Mhm.
whether or not it's practical is the issue. And for most of us, it just is not. It's not practical for people to try to run a home on one income. It's tough. That's tough. And so, financially, if you have a client coming to you and he's making that he's 55,000, bringing home 40,000, and he's saying that he's about to take on an adult uh, dependent, what are you saying to him? What are you telling him?
Um,
It's tough. I know.
it's tough. It's tough. You got to really rethink that. I mean, it's certainly, when you come from the space of, okay, he's got to live, so he's got a house, an apartment, condo, roof over his head. So to slide somebody in there is probably not that difficult because he's already doing it anyway. So if it's subtracting from that, then you got a problem.
Well, and a dependent does, whether it's a child or an adult dependent. It's not just sliding them in there because they need clothes, they need food, you know what I mean? They're going to increase the electricity, they're going to increase the gas. You're taking a woman in, she's got feminine hygiene products. There's an addition, if she's not working, there's insurance. I mean, it's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah,
And I know
yeah.
you're trying to, be neutral and keep things and keep things cool, but I was looking for the juicy answer because it's really destroying a lot of dating relationships that have potential,
Mhm.
either because it's unable or in many cases unwilling to become a provider. And it's like, with the economy doing the seesaw right now, not sure how practical
Yeah,
this.
well, I mean, and here's another angle. I mean, if that is the case, then maybe he needs to help her dust off that resume, and because there's 200,000 job openings right now. So the advice would be, hey, sweetie, guess what? Let me get your LinkedIn together. Let me get your resume together. Let me get what's out there. Let me call, Daryl James or Stephen Ray or somebody who needs an assistant. Maybe you can start there. Maybe that person hated what they, because, we were talking about numbers, but there's probably, and I'm underestimating this, it's probably about 50% of the people out here in America hate what they do every morning. They hate going to, as my grandfather would say, go see Mr. Charlie. So they hate doing that. If you could, yeah. So if you can create opportunities where people say, hey, you know what? I want to go do this, or I thought about I want to be a curator or an art gallery, and you can put them in touch with somebody and say, hey, you know what? I got an assistant for you, and just build people up. I think people, for whatever, they get off track. They have different career paths, and they thought that they wanted to do this, and they ended up doing something else. And then when they did that something else, it wasn't something that they really wanted to do, but it paid the bills. Here's a funny story. So people that I know that spent the most money on a wedding, their marriage lasts the least. So they go out and spend $100,000, stayed married 3-4 years. People that just went to the justice of the peace, still married today. So here's what I want to leave you with is that people will say, okay, honey, I love you. It's good. I want to spend the rest of my life with you. So he, and I'm gonna put it on both of them. They'll go out and they'll get a wedding planner, and they'll spend all this money on a wedding, 100,000. Every night they'll come home and spend 3 hours planning that wedding, but they spend about 3 hours planning to stay together for the next 100 years. You know what I mean? So, for example, they're not going to get the therapy that they need in terms of, because I would say, like, if my daughter got married, she says, hey, Dad, I'm getting ready to get married, and, we're going to have a year engagement. I'd say, well, you need to go see a family therapist. Here's a check for 5 therapy sessions. You guys pay for the other 5. Don't go see Pastor Jones, who has no background in that. Go to the family therapist. Because things are going to come out. Let's make, so let's start laying the foundation. And in the therapy sessions, it should come out as to who pays bills on time, who doesn't, who's the saver, who's the spender. So those who's the practical person, who's the person who's not logical. So I see, and very few of us do that. Probably 1% of us will say, hey, you know what? Let's really put some time and effort and energy to making this thing work.